As you all already know, pigments can be classified into synthetic and iron oxide pigments. These are the most common pigments used in permanent makeup. What's also well known is that all brown shades consist of yellow, black and red. The first difference between iron oxide and synthetic pigments is different stability of these colors. This means that after a while some colors disappear faster, while some are more stable and are retained for a longer period of time. Here we can see that with iron oxide and synthetic pigments, yellow disappears the fastest. It disappears and fades equally with both. On the other one, with red color, we can see the difference. With iron oxide pigments, red is the most stable color and lasts the longest, whereas with synthetic pigments, black is the most stable one and lasts the longest. Both of these pigments have some good and bad features. With iron oxide pigments, red is both a positive and a negative feature. For example, its stability. Why is this good? A positive feature of red is that it gives the warmth at the very beginning for the next few months, and the negative one is that red will be retained much longer than the other colors, which will make the eyebrows reddish one day. Another bad thing is the presence of heavy metals in quantities that are not allowed, for example higher than prescribed by RESAP, and of course a negative feature of iron oxide pigments is that they are magnetized. When it comes to synthetic pigments, the synthetic pigments we've been using for the past year also have their good and bad sides. With synthetic pigments, black has its positive and negative roles. A negative role is that the eyebrows, for example their color, cannot look warm from the beginning. However, a positive role of stable black is that the eyebrows won't become reddish after a year or a year and a half. Another positive side of synthetic pigments is the absence of heavy metals and the fact that they're not magnetized. What also makes a big difference between these two pigments is their specific weight. Iron oxide pigments are much heavier, and that makes their application into the skin much easier. On the other hand, synthetic pigments are very light. They even float on water surface, and they are, due to their low specific weight, quite difficult to apply into the skin, and it takes a lot of time and a specific technique to apply a synthetic pigment. Our main idea was to combine iron oxide and synthetic pigments and to take what's best from both, positive features of synthetic pigments and positive features of iron oxides. So in our new SUP formula, we used red iron oxide pigment and yellow and black remained synthetic pigments. What did we get? The result is a pigment that has no negative or bad features. We actually have a very stable black, a very stable red, a loud quantity of heavy metals under the RESAP limit, a very simple and easy application into the skin. And what is important for us as artists, as well as for our clients, is that we can get a very warm color from the beginning till it disappears entirely. The pigments are also not magnetized, as you can see in the video that follows. As for the pigment's performance, we've kept the performance related to dilution in water. SUP pigment is very difficult to dissolve, and this is very good for color migration, for example, lack of migration under the skin. Another performance we've kept is, of course, that the pigment is not magnetized. The pigment itself or the fact it's magnetized is not something that can cause problems when having an MRI, but I personally believe that the pigment we apply into the skin must not be magnetized, not for this reason, because this wouldn't be a problem. I believe that something that enters our skin in any sense shouldn't be magnetized. With SU pigments, when opening them for the first time, we might have a few drops of separate oil. However, with new SUP formula, we have overcome this problem. Also, in the old pigment, we had a lower level of honey effect compared to the SUP. All brown shades used in eyebrow drawing contain three primary colors: yellow as sunset, red as warm effect, black as Arabian night. Red, black and yellow make the brown shade, and this information is very important for us when dealing with problems with old permanent makeup that didn't fade to a brown shade. Since red the most stable colors, we most often have the situation that eyebrows become red after a while, or grayish after a year and a half if black is the most stable, because black is seen as gray through the skin. In order to solve the problem with red old permanent makeup, we have to add a combination of yellow and black that is missing, since we already have red in the skin. By combining these two shades, we get an olive shade by mixing 2/3 of yellow and 1/3 of black. If there is some black in the skin, we see it as gray on the surface. By combining red and yellow, we get an orange shade by mixing 2/3 of yellow and 1/3 of red. In order to solve the problem with purple old permanent makeup, we only use yellow, sunset, without adding other colors. If black and red are colors happen to be the most stable ones and that they have been retained in the skin, and black has disappeared entirely, what we see on the surface of the skin may seem purple. One of the biggest misconceptions that exist in the permanent makeup theory when it comes to colors is the division of brown pigments or brown shades into two types, cold and warm shades. The aim of this video is to present and resolve this misconception. The same amount of yellow, red and black will give us brown color. Brown 2. Used only with natural brunettes. By adding a shade of yellow to brown 2, we get a lighter color, brown 1, used with natural blondes. By adding 2 drops of yellow to brown 2, we get golden brown, used with extreme blondes. This group of colors that contain more yellow compared to the others can be referred to as colors based on yellow or yellow-based colors. By adding another dose or drop of Arabian Night, black that we call Arabian Night, into brown 2, we get brown 3. This is a darker variety of brown 2, used when drawing eyebrows on extremely dark women with natural black hair. All the shades that contain a higher percentage of black compared to the others are called black base colors. If we add red to brown 2, we get fox, the pigment that contains much more red than yellow and black, and it can only be used with natural redheads. By adding more red into brown 2, we get all the possible shades that can be called red base. We can see from all this that there are basic divisions of pigments. Colors can be divided into red base, yellow base and black base. Since there are no other shades in getting brown pigments for permanent makeup, we should not mention green, purple or blue, because these shades aren't used for getting brown pigments for permanent makeup. So there are only 3 basic colors by which we can get all the possible combinations of brown shades. In the middle there are 3 colors that make brown shades. These are yellow, red and black. By adding yellow, we can get the lightest brown. If we talk about yellow base, we add drops with the lightest shade, almost yellow, from brown to the lightest brown. Then from brown to black if we talk about black base. When it comes to red base, we get all the shades from brown to red. By adding the same amounts of two colors to our brown, for example, the same amounts of yellow and red, we get an orange base color. From brown to purple. The same amount of red and black is not recommended for eyebrow drawing. And by adding the same amounts of yellow and black, we get an olive base color that goes from brown to olive green. Since this is another misconception, besides dividing the colors into cold and warm that we have already proved wrong, the skin is also often classified into warm and cold in permanent makeup industry. I want to remind you that the best way to see which pigments exist in the skin is to take a look of the natural hair color or natural eyebrows color that show the exact pigment we have in our skin in the best way. Since the skin and its color change during the year, it's not the same if you come to the treatment before or after sunbathing. We can assess the skin wrongly, and that's why I advise you not to look at the skin. The best way to see the pigment that exists in the skin is to take a look at the natural hair or eyebrows color. This means that by combining these pigments, we want to make our color as similar to the natural hair or eyebrows pigment of our model as possible. The most important thing and the most important factor for the final look of the color is the thickness of the epidermis, or the depth into which the pigment is applied. We'll represent different depths with two skin samples of different thickness. With shallow work or thin skin that covers the pigment, we see the color as very similar to the actual color. While on the thick skin sample, where we show deep work, the color looks quite cold, blue or grayish. Deep work, shallow work. As you can see, the colors are identical beneath. On the left, there's old SU formula, and here's the new SUP one. Besides the difference between these two pigments in terms of composition of pigments inside the bottles, SUP formula is more advanced in terms of physical performances of the pigment itself.